Hello and welcome to the GMBN Tech Show. On the show this week we have the brand new release from Yeti, as well as some new alloy bikes. That and of course all the normal good stuff.
So here we have that new Yeti SB115, which sits firmly in the middle of the SB130 and the SB100. Of course, the 115 correlates to the fact it's got 115 mil of travel as opposed to 100 or 130, in which it sits in the middle of. So where does this actually differ and where does it sit in on that Yeti range? So the SB100 is their cross-country bike. It could be a racer bike or it could be just a cross-country trails bike. The SB130 of course is more of a trail bike designed to be ridden a bit harder. Now the Yeti crew are famous for their lunch ride sort of theory, where they essentially take an existing frame and beef it up a bit for their hour-long sessions at lunch in the Colorado Hills, where they just want to thrash a standard bike a little bit more than perhaps the average punter would. So by doing that, they've effectively put a 130mm travel fork on a SB100 and they've changed the linkage and put a slightly longer stroke shock on it. It's pretty much the same frame, delivering a little bit more travel out back, a bit more travel out front, and ergo being a little bit different. So who's it suitable for? Well, if you ask me, it's still a cross-country bike. You'll hear the term downcountry bandied around. It's a load of rubbish. I'd rather call it triple XC, to be honest. It's just cross-country. And then within cross-country, you get riding and racing. So this is not a cross-country race bike, this is a cross-country riding bike. Perfect for multi-day events, I guess, like BC Bike Race or Cape Epic in South Africa, stuff like that. Yeah, it's a gorgeous looking bike. It's a Yeti, of course, has all the great Yeti stuff going on, like the Switch Infinity system. Essentially, the pivot point moves throughout the travel. So at the sag point, which I think on this is about 30%, you get very high anti-squat. So it sits up and it goes. But further deeper into the travel, you get less anti-squat. So it's a really cool system, and they've actually rotated it 90 degrees. They did this on the SB100 as well, and tucked it in under here, whereas you can actually see it on the side on other models of bike, like a 150 and various other ones. Don't really need to maintain it though, it's just two shafts. There's no air, or it's not a shock unit like some people think it is. It's just two shafts with a bush that moves up and down over them, essentially. Gorgeous looking bike. But I've got to say, I'm a bit confused by it. The SB100 is plenty for what it's intended for, and then the SB130, of course, is far more of a trail bike, a bit more aggressive. What do you think of a 115mm travel bike running that 130? Is that a good idea for you guys? Anyone, does it make sense to you? I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Of course, there's a different bike for everyone out there, and accordingly, they make a bike for everyone in the range. They do this one in the Turk, this is the higher end carbon one. They do it in regular carbon as well. They do it as a frame only build, and they do it in various different build kits as well. I think this one is a T1, so it's got XT and some other bits and pieces on it, but as you can see, pretty smart looking bike. I mean, it's a Yeti, so it gets to super nice on a dirt shed show, whatever happens. But there we go, and just some pricing for you. So I'm gonna have to actually refer to my notes on this because there's too many details here to remember. So in the UK, they range from $4,899 up to $6,899. In dollars, that's $4,700 up to $6,900. They also do a T3 issue, but I don't think that's currently available in the UK or Europe, but that might change. That's $8,000. And the frame is $3,199 UK, $3,400 US dollars and $3,590 in euros. Now with geometry, it's virtually identical. There's like in a size large, of which this is, it's 2mm difference. I think the 100 is 2mm longer than this, so it's 452 over 450, which this is. Chain stays the same. BB height is 8mm difference. This is a little bit higher, but of course is a little bit higher in travel, so by the time you return that with sag, it's going to be similar to the SB100. So essentially, a cross-country bike with a bit of sting. I kind of like it.
So this week we see the new Evo range of bikes from Orange. So what does that mean? Well, their Evo range is slightly shorter travel, losing 10mm at the fork and 15mm at the back. So it makes it a bit more nimble, and they're also lighter. Now, we've seen bike brands do this before, where they basically kind of release a new take on a current model. But sometimes it can be a bit confusing. For instance, Evo in Specialized range means it's the more aggressive version of the same frame. Also in Specialized range, they use the ST, which means short travel, but for Nikolai, ST means super travel. So it's worth doing your homework. But that means the Stage 5 Evo goes down to 130mm on the front and 120mm at the back, and the 5 Evo is now a 140, 130mm bike. Both undergo a bit of a revamp when it comes to the compression damping as well as the leverage tune. That means they're not just shortening the travel, but they're changing the ride characteristic of the bike. They both use 76-degree seat tube angles with a 64-degree on the slightly longer travel 5 Evo and 65-degree angle for the Stage 5. So looks really cool, and we're seeing now that angles are kind of getting more aggressive, and we're seeing a lot of people go for shorter travel bikes. I know that I'm riding a bike 130mm 29er, I probably wouldn't have ridden it that much a couple of years ago. So it's super cool to see bikes with more aggressive geometry, meaning that bumping up huge quantities of travel isn't always the answer anymore. So very cool. But what else we got in the news? So on to alloy bike number 2, and this one's a bit different. It's a bit burlier, a new bike from Commencal. So this bike does look, I think it looks absolutely ruddy fantastic. So it's the new Commencal Meta Am. Now we saw the TR version of this bike, which looks actually quite similar, but this is the real enduro version. It is long travel, a 170mm fork paired to 160mm at the back on a 29er platform. So it's aggressive. And of course, this bike has enjoyed a huge amount of success under that Commencal enduro team, most notably under Cecile Ravenel. I saw last year she was running an angle set, so I assume, you know, in this new version, they've had a lot of input from their racers, because boy oh boy is it slack. So it's a 63.6 degree head angle, and that is paired to a 78.5 degree seat tube angle. So what does that mean, a seat tube angle that steep? You guessed it, huge amounts of reach. So for the small, it is 445mm, and that goes all the way in the larger size to 520mm. So it's pretty big indeed. Now the chainstays, conversely, aren't actually that long at 433. So they've redesigned the rear end to give more heel clearance, etc. And they wanted to make it kind of more neatly packaged, I suppose. But it looks really, really cool. There's plenty of down tube protection, both for shuttle rash closer to the head tube and under that bottom bracket shell. The paint jobs look, I think, fantastic, understated, classy, but I think going to be very distinctive in years to come. They have build options available with Öhlins, Fox and RockShox, though interestingly enough, there's some quite selective pixelization on the website. So you'll have to go check that one out for yourselves. I wonder what that could be alluding to. And now it is time for the quiz. So earlier on in the news, we mentioned the new bike from Commencal. Now Commencal as a brand was started by Max Commencal, but which company did Max originally cut his teeth in the bike trade? It was a big brand, enjoyed a huge amount of success. So which company did Max Commencal work for before Commencal? The second question is, the DW Link is a very popular and well-regarded suspension design. You know, it's got lots of different variants and there's a huge amount of titles and championships to its name. But what does DW stand for? And the last question, what is the difference between a BSA threaded bottom bracket and an Italian threaded bottom bracket? So BSA is definitely more common on our mountain bikes, but you still do see new releases from huge brands in the road bike side of things come out with Italian threaded bottom brackets. So what's the difference? And welcome to Bike Cave. Now you know the score. This is where we get to see where you work on your bikes and where you store them. Now if you've got a good submission, get it into the upload link below and hopefully we can feature it on the show. The first submission this week is from Diwa in Sweden. I hope I pronounced that right, pretty sure I didn't. And they say that they upgraded their cave with better quality tools and maintenance products, and it looks pretty good. Really, really good indeed actually. Really good use of the space, and interestingly enough, I see some football on the telly. There's not so much of a crossover in the Venn diagram of football fans, mountain bikers. I am a football fan and a mountain biker, so you know, it's pretty refreshing to see someone I can talk about the football with. But the workshop looks really, really good. Like I said, loads of space used really, really well. You got all the muck off all the park stuff, and some little trays at the bottom for all your gubbins. Now that looks really, really good. A nice little vise as well, which is very useful indeed. Next, we have a submission from Gregory, who comes from Maine. and they just finished installing a rental stem and they replaced the bottom bracket in their bike cave, and it looks like a perfect place to do the job. Just nice little setup bolted to the wall there. We've got some magnetic strips which are actually very useful as well, and loads of bikes. That giant Trance, you've got a Liv there, felt, South of Fat bike. It's all going on. Nice. Looks like a massive space that. I'm really jealous. It looks really, really good. Lovely. Next, we have a submission from Phil in East Sussex, and he says, "Hi guys, I love the show, especially love the tech." Nice. "I don't have a garage or enough room for a shed large enough to work on my bike, so I custom built the world's smallest cave to store all my stuff for my great two passions, bikes and cars." Nice. So he's has got nice voodoo hardtail. Ooh, sweet, a reactor. Awesome, man. It's really nice in that kind of very subtle, modest finish. Super classy. Nice. And here is the cave in question. I mean, that is. You want a tight ship. That's awesome. That's great. Just next to the side of the house. What else do you need? I think that's awesome, Phil. Genuinely, that's good. Last submission is from Dan in Newcastle, and he says, "This is my bike cave. I know it's not as good as most, but it still gives me the place to work on my bike. I mean, it looks pretty good to me, man. It's perfect for when my bike is dirty and saves my ears chewed off by bringing the bike indoors." I mean, we've all been there. But yeah, no, it looks good. I mean, you've got loads of storage. You've got the work stand. Awesome. No, it looks really, really good. Pretty convenient how everything just clips onto the that kind of slatting you've got to actually makes it the walls of the shed. What bike is that? Another Lapierre. Awesome. I think they look great. We've had them on the show recently in top mods, and there's just something about a shock piercing a seat tube. I just think looks fantastic. That's awesome. So thank you very much for your submission, guys. Keep getting them in, and hopefully we can get them on the show.
Okay, now it's time for Rewind. This, naturally, is our old school part of the show, where you show and tell us about your retro stuff. But this week, I'm actually going to show you something of mine. In the meantime, look at the link at the bottom of the screen there. That's to our uploader service. So if you've got anything old, retro, 90s sort of mountain bike stuff, even earlier, would be brilliant. Send it to us. Send us some images, tell us about it, or if you don't know about it, send us some images and we'll tell you about it. Now for this week, someone has sent me one of these bad boys. Now this is a power post. And it comes with a lever on the bars. As you might imagine, it's some kind of dropper post from the 90s. 1996, in fact, there were two models, Extreme and the Cross Country. I don't actually know which model this is. I would guess Extreme, judging by the things it does. So the position it's in at the moment, bear in mind it's got a parallelogram to it. The position it's in at the moment mimics the regular position on a seat post. But you've got two alternative ones. You've got a climbing position, so if I click this, it's a bit old now, so it doesn't move quite as well. If I click this button, let's try again, and it moves forwards into a vertical position. That puts you further forwards on the bike. So bearing in mind, this was designed around old school geometry on bikes where they had very long stems, very short top tubes. It was really easy to wheelie bikes when climbing up hills, but also it's quite topical of today because we're going for steeper and steeper seat angles to achieve exactly this. And then for descending, instead of dropping down out of the way, you sit on it basically and it drops. Sorry, a bit tricky to do this all at once. And it drops all the way back. And the advantage of it having it back is actually quite cool because of the fact that when you're naturally over the back of a saddle, if you have a regular seat post, you've basically got a tyre exposed between you and your nether regions. This just basically slams the whole thing down so you can actually pinch the saddle between your knees and have an element of control. It's a bit wacky, but I guess it would have worked. It also has one other feature, which is kind of a bit weird and quirky. They call it storage. It folds all the way forwards. Give me a second just to lock it in place. I'm not really sure why you would want that position, because that is making your top tube extremely short. But I imagine it would give a shorter rider the opportunity to ride your bike if that was a selling point. It's actually quite useful for me though if I could get this on one of my bikes, because I'm obviously quite tall, and Jack the cameraman, who's not filming today, I'm filming this myself, but Jack the cameraman, he's vertically challenged and he loves my bike, so maybe I'll put this on one of my bikes, Jack, and you can get to try my bike out. But jokes aside, I actually want to try this on a bike. I've got a retro bike hanging up just over there. This will clash horrendously with it, but I want to try it out to see actually what it's like on the trails. I'm going to do some more retro content, looking at old tech and why we don't see this stuff and what this has turned into these days. But anyway, if you've got anything old school, could be you, could be a bike, could be a helmet, could be a photograph, anything, send it to us. We love this stuff. See you next week.
Now it is time for Top Mods, which is where we get to show off all the modifications you do on your bikes. Now they don't have to be anything massive, maybe it's something to do with your bike, not the bike itself, such as this week, where we're going to feature a couple of homemade mudguards. The first one is from Hugo, and he has really gone to town decorating these mudguards, and they actually do look pretty smart. I particularly like that kind of black one with just the white in it. I think it looks pretty good. He admits himself it's probably not the best time to start fitting mudguards, but they're so light now, and it's just saves you getting a face full of something nasty, so all good in my opinion. And the next one is from Stuart in Scotland, and this is really cool. He's been 3D printing these very tidy rear mudguards, just to stop all the muck and the dirt getting jettisoned into the rear shock and bearings. I actually have one. Obviously, I haven't gone to the effort of making one like you. wouldn't have the skill or tenacity with a 3D printer. But I think it's a really good idea. If you ride in muddy conditions, it doesn't affect clearance. And you know, how much does a mudguard weigh? Probably not very much. And if it stops that same amount of weight in mud getting clung onto the frame, then you're probably onto a winner if you do ride in the mud lot. And it also does stop stones and stuff, as Stuart says here. He actually says that although he just designed them for himself for a bit of fun, he's unintentionally made a bit of a side hustle because people have been asking them, you know, where to get one for themselves. And honestly, if that came on a new bike, you wouldn't take a second look, will you? I think it looks super cool. Factory. A nice one. Well, thank you for sending them in. If you have a submission of your own, get them into the upload link below. And like I said, hopefully we can get it on the show. So now it is time for the answers to the quiz. So the first question, where did Max Commencal make his name as a mountain bike designer? It was, of course, Sun. So Sun were the French brand that enjoyed huge amounts of success in the 90s and early noughties and really did dominate across the board, both in the men's and the women's. And they, really influential brand, Sun, and they still make great bikes today actually. The second answer, what does DW in DW Link stand for? It is, of course, Dave Weigel, who's a bit of a guru when it comes to suspension design and has had so many influences right across the industry, from bikes to forks to, you know, component brands. So a really interesting guy. The last question, what's the difference between a BSA and an Italian threaded bottom bracket? Well, they do have a slightly different diameter. I think it's only about 1 millimeter. I think the Italian is about 36, but the big difference is that the Italian bottom bracket has a right-handed thread on both sides, unlike the BSA, which has a reverse thread on the drive side. So you don't want to go messing that up and putting one in the wrong standard, because it would chew up your threads something horrid. Now guys, thank you very much for watching this week's GMBN Tech Show. Don't forget to get in the comments and let us know what you think of alloy mountain bikes. Are they cooler than carbon? I'm on the fence. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.